In recent weeks, the economic situation in Russia has become the subject of alarming reports in leading Western and Asian outlets. According to Financial Times and Bloomberg, a series of Ukrainian drone strikes on key Russian oil refineries triggered a chain reaction, a drop in fuel production, disruptions in gasoline supply to the domestic market, and a sharp rise in prices. Insiders in Russian financial circles claim that for the first time in many years, the state is facing the threat of a large-scale fuel shortage at home. The crisis is felt most acutely in agricultural regions where fuel scarcity is paralyzing seasonal work and gas stations are seeing multi-hour lines. Against this backdrop, the Russian Ministry of Finance officially acknowledged a record budget deficit, which Western analysts estimate at $5 trillion in the near future. The figure may seem staggering, but insiders cited by Reuters note that the costs of the war against Ukraine are several times higher than planned expenditures. While revenues from hydrocarbon exports are rapidly falling due to sanctions and declining global demand, Europe has cut its imports of Russian gas to almost zero. While competition in Asia is intensifying, China and India are already securing maximum discounts, effectively pushing Moscow into raw material dependency. The Wall Street Journal reports that the Kremlin now has almost no room to maneuver. Military spending is consuming more and more resources, while domestic needs, from social support to infrastructure, are financed on a residual basis. The economy, as one banking sector source put it, is literally sinking, staying afloat only thanks to the printing press and emergency loans from friendly states. But even Russia's loyal partners are increasingly voicing doubts about its solvency. For Putin, the situation is becoming a dilemma. Either continue the war and risk a complete economic collapse, or seek a path to negotiations. According to European diplomatic sources cited by Politico, in recent weeks, the Kremlin has hinted through closed channels at the possibility of a tactical pause in the war. Yet publicly, Putin remains defiant, refusing concessions. Inside the country, any admission of weakness could damage his image as a strong leader, forcing him to balance between military rhetoric and the catastrophic state of the budget. An unexpected factor in this equation is Donald Trump. According to the Washington Post, Trump views Russia's economic crisis as an opportunity. He is reportedly persuading his allies that now is the moment to pressure Moscow into negotiations and even achieve partial normalization of relations. Critics in Congress, however, call his position naive. One Republican senator compared Trump's remarks to the behavior of a schoolboy admiring a teacher, even when openly humiliated. Trump's stance looks like an attempt to befriend Putin at a time when he remains the main source of threat to NATO and a vital strategic supplier of resources for China. Analysts at the Carnegie Endowment note that the United States now faces a unique window of opportunity. If Washington applies pressure on Russia through financial channels, restricts its export routes, and imposes new targeted sanctions, the Kremlin will be forced to choose between rapid negotiations or an economic collapse to the level of the late 1990s. Yet this is also a risky strategy. A cornered Russia may escalate further to show that it can still dictate terms. Meanwhile, social tensions inside Russia are rising. According to Meduza and BBC Russian service, regions are seeing delays in payments to state employees, including military personnel, and pensioners are facing postponed benefits. Economists call this a worrying signal. When the state begins to cut costs at the expense of the most vulnerable, it means the crisis has reached a systemic level. The situation has become paradoxical. Russia, despite its vast natural resources, finds itself in the position of a state showing signs of default. The key question is what steps Putin will take. Will he continue the war to the very end, disregarding the deficits and domestic crisis, or will he attempt to find a way out through negotiations? For Trump, this is an opportunity to play the role of peacemaker, while for Russia, it represents the last chance to avoid catastrophic consequences and a complete economic collapse. Yet, insiders cited by Bloomberg note that there are no signs of readiness to surrender in the Kremlin. On the contrary, Russia continues to search for ways to stay afloat through increasingly risky measures, which could lead the country to even harsher consequences. While the Kremlin attempts to hide the true scale of the economic problems, independent analysts are increasingly pointing to alarming trends. According to a study published by the Economist Intelligence Unit, the Russian stock market is experiencing its worst period in the past 10 years. Foreign investors are leaving en masse, and domestic companies are forced to operate under currency shortages and without access to modern technologies. The petrochemical sector has been hit particularly hard. It was the main target of Ukrainian drone strikes. Financial Times experts note that restoring even a single large refinery could take up to a year and a half. While total losses in the oil and gas sector have already exceeded $30 billion, pressure from Russia's allies is also growing. China and India, despite public rhetoric about strategic partnership, are increasingly exploiting Moscow